Well, escalating tensions between the Trump administration and congressional Democrats. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler announcing that he is open to negotiating with the Department of Justice over the Mueller report, quote, without conditions. It is time for our headliner, Republican Congressman Doug Collins of Georgia, the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. He joins us now. Open to DOJ talks, but won't drop the Barr contempt vote. What are we to make of what is happening here? Congressman, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Again, we're seeing a chairman who, frankly, has shown in 5.5 months he really doesn't know what he wants, except that, frankly, he wants to subpoena everything that moves. He wants to go to contempt. And now he's come back after holding someone in contempt. Think about what's happening here. You have a chairman who held somebody in contempt on false grounds, and now he's saying, I'm open to negotiate. He knows he can't win in court. That's what this is all about.
Okay, Jerry Nadler, this is quote number 2, guys. Nadler's response to the DOJ, contrary to your argument that the committee's continuing accommodation efforts somehow suggest that our prior requests were overbroad. Our offer to compromise was intended to respond to your prior objections by seeking the middle ground. We urge the department to do the same. We urge you not to make the mistake of breaking off accommodations again. Appears to me that there's a negotiation underway. On that, can you agree?
No, not really, because the chairman's not negotiating. He's coming back with the same tired talking points that he said before. He's not having negotiations here because what he is saying is that we want what we want. And to say that there was good faith on his part on this negotiation to start with was when he asked the Attorney General for something that he couldn't do. After we held him in contempt, we had a hearing the next week on executive privilege. The chairman had 3 witnesses, we had 1. All 4 witnesses, our witness and the 3 witnesses of the Democrats, all said that what the chairman asked of Bill Barr was illegal. So how can you have a contempt for making the Attorney General follow the law? This is nothing but a circus, and the chairman, frankly, I'm not sure where he wants to go next, except he's feeding a base that is pushing him.
Your Republican colleague in the Senate, John Kennedy, was here to react earlier and made this point. Congressman.
Congress has an appropriate oversight role, but you have to have a legitimate legislative purpose. And I think it's clear to most Americans that some of my friends in the House leadership have decided just to be abusive. They've asked the administration for everything but the kitchen sink at the White House, and they may ask for that.
I could see you, Congressman, reacting to the senator's words there. Clearly, you're in agreement with what he has to say. But what about Robert Mueller? Are we going to hear from him? Is your committee going to subpoena him?
Oh, that would be, that's up to the chairman. I've said this before, and I said it earlier in this interview. This chairman seems to want to interview or to subpoena anything that moves or he thinks makes a headline. But yet he stayed away from Mueller. I believe there's 2 points here. I believe he doesn't want to hear from actually have Mr. Mueller under oath in our committee because Mr. Mueller is going to say what he said last week was there's no collusion, there was no charged obstruction. He's actually going to also say I'm not going to comment outside what our report says. But what also I think is Mr. Mueller doesn't want to come because he doesn't want to answer my questions or John Ratcliffe's questions or Jim Jordan's questions about how we got this started, why they only picked out certain parts of the dossier to prove is false, but yet left everything out from basically what we're finding more and more was a baseless accusation to start with. The problem we're seeing here is that this chairman has no idea really what he wants to do except feed a ravenous base. And the senator mentioned a legitimate legislative purpose. A legitimate legislative purpose is not presidential harassment on an issue in which Mueller has spoken. It is a purpose in which he just simply wants to get it out there to appear he's trying to impeach.
Last question on this, and we want to move to border security. I am told that the Inspector General's report by Michael Horowitz will be made public soon. I don't know how you define soon. Do you have any information on that?
I'm hopefully in the next few weeks we're going to see that come out. And again, I think that's another step in this process that, frankly, the Democrats don't want to deal with because this is actually looking at the abuse in the FISA system, which we've actually been talking about for a long time.
You say you're hoping, or do you know?
We feel like we don't have an exact date, Bill, I think, but I do believe it's sometime in the next few weeks is probably the best I can do.
Got to get your take on what is happening with immigration and the efforts on the part of President Trump to stem those coming across our southern border. Obviously, the threat of tariffs is out there, and a big meeting is happening in Washington today, Congressman.
It's a shame that the president is having to take action here. It's a shame that the president is having to actually do something to protect our southern border, which right now is at a crisis. I was there just last week, and it was just painful to see what was happening down there. And yet to come back to Washington, D.C., and to see the Democratic colleagues so out of touch with what's going on the southern border. We passed a bill yesterday that gives another green light to the world that says, make it to the U.S. and we'll make sure that you can stay here legally. What the president is doing is simply pushing Mexico to help us in this regard. But this comes back to a Congress that needs to act. I need a chairman who is not obsessed with investigations. I need a chairman who will actually do his job, and a committee that will do his job on immigration, because we have the way to fix this. 3 areas: Flores decision, which is the detaining provision; asylum, credible fear; Trafficking Victims Act. We're having almost 3,000 people come across that have been identified as basically fraudulent family units. 2 weeks ago, a Honduran male, 51 years old, brought a 6-month-old across the border so he could be a family unit. They're buying, renting, and borrowing kids to come across, and my chairman and the Democrats, Speaker Pelosi and Leader Hoyer, are negligent in not bringing this to the floor.
I believe we have a photo of you at the border. You were there about a week ago, as you mentioned there. We can put that up for our viewers to see. I don't know how you feel about tariffs. I don't know if you think this is a good idea or not, but the House passed this Dreamers Act just last night on a path to citizenship.
Yep. Look, the tariffs are something I think the president's using. I hope they don't have to go into effect. I hope Mexico today and the Mexican authorities work with our authorities so that we don't have to have that go into effect. But it does highlight, and the president is highlighting, that there is a crisis here. The Dreamer bill last night was amazing that they wanted it to be bipartisan, but yet they chose the most partisan path they could roll. There was a bill much closer in the last Congress that might could have gotten a good bipartisan support because it included some security issues and some security to make sure DACA recipients were able to find that pathway. But they chose to go to feed a far left base that simply wanted legalization at all costs.
I take it you did not support that, then. I know 7 Republicans did.
No, I was on the floor for 2 hours yesterday explaining what was wrong about this bill, because it is not good. In fact, if anything, it exasperates our problem on the border. And at the end of the day, this bill will never get signed. It was sad to watch Democrats on the floor yesterday talk about a bill while Dreamers were and DACA recipients were in our gallery, and basically they were just lying to them because this bill will not solve their problem, because they will not become law.
Sir, thank you for your time. I hope you come back soon. Plenty to cover next time, all right? Doug Collins, Republican from Georgia. Thank you, sir.